when Mark pulled over to help a stranded biker in the pouring rain. He had no idea this simple act of kindness would change his life forever. The next morning, he woke up to the thunderous roar of 600 motorcycles lined up outside his house, each rider carrying gifts and ready to repay his generosity in ways he never imagined. But what could one single dad have possibly done in those few hours that would mobilize an entire community to show up at his doorstep? The windshield wipers fight a losing battle against the torrential downpour as Mark Davidson grips the steering wheel of his faded blue pickup truck, the familiar ache in his lower back bringing back memories of another sleepless night spent hunched over repair manuals at the kitchen table, while Emma slept peacefully in the next room, her gentle snores mixing with the house's settling sounds that have become the soundtrack of their quiet life together. The dashboard clock glows 11:47 p.m. in numbers that seem to pulse with the urgency of approaching midnight, and the rain pounds against the metal roof like 1,000 impatient fingers drumming out an urgent Morse code that only the storm understands, each droplet carrying the weight of clouds that have traveled across the Pacific to unleash their burden on Highway 47's already treacherous curves and blind spots that claim unwary drivers with ruthless efficiency. In the passenger seat, 8-year-old Emma sleeps peacefully, her slight chest rising and falling in the rhythm of childhood dreams that still come easily despite the upheaval that has defined the past 2 years of their lives, one arm wrapped protectively around Mr. Patches. The threadbare teddy bear that still smells faintly of her mother's lavender perfume, even after countless trips through the washing machine that have faded his fur from rich brown to the color of old pennies. The heater hums its mechanical lullaby, fogging the windows just enough that Mark has to lean forward to see through the curtain of water that Highway 47 has become. Each passing semi-truck sending waves across his windshield that momentarily blind him to the world beyond, forcing him to navigate by memory and instinct through familiar territory made alien by weather that transforms known roads into uncharted waterways. The emergency fund envelope tucked beneath his visor contains exactly $47.32, money he'd been saving for Emma's school supplies and the new winter coat she'll need before October's first frost arrives, to remind them that survival requires constant vigilance and careful planning when resources are limited and unexpected expenses can derail months of careful budgeting. His calloused hands, permanently stained with motor oil and marked by countless small cuts from years of coaxing life back into broken engines, navigate the truck through puddles that could swallow a smaller vehicle whole, his mechanic's intuition reading the road's surface through the steering wheel's vibrations and the subtle changes in tire pressure that speak of hidden dangers beneath the water's deceptive surface. The radio crackles with weather warnings and static, announcers' words that fade in and out like transmissions from a distant planet as they report flooding, road closures, and accident statistics that rise with each hour of sustained rainfall. But Mark keeps the volume low so Emma won't wake to worry about things beyond her control, the way she did during last month's tornado watch when she'd crawled into his bed and asked if storms could take daddies away too, just like they took mommy in that car accident that shattered their world into before and after, leaving them to navigate grief and practical concerns with equal measures of determination and barely controlled panic. Through the sheets of rain that turn the familiar highway into an impressionist painting of blurred lights and moving shadows, his headlights catch a sight that makes him ease off the accelerator, a figure hunched over a motorcycle on the shoulder, barely visible against the darkness, except for the reflective strips on rain-soaked leather that catch the light like desperate signals sent from a sinking ship. The bike sits silent and still, its chrome dulled by water and defeat, while its owner crouches beside it in a posture that speaks of frustration and desperation, and the particular helplessness that comes when machines betray the trust we place in their mechanical reliability, when steel and chrome and carefully maintained engines choose the worst possible moment to surrender to entropy and time. Mark's foot hovers over the brake pedal, and for a moment he considers the warm, dry sanctuary of his truck cab, the sleeping daughter who trusts him to make safe choices that prioritize her well-being above all other considerations. The $47 that represents security in their carefully budgeted world, where every expense must be weighed against Emma's needs, and the constant pressure of bills that arrive with clockwork regularity, regardless of his ability to pay them. But something deeper pulls at him. That familiar instinct that made him a good paramedic before Emma's medical bills, and the need for flexible hours that would allow him to be present for school plays and parent-teacher conferences, drove him to part-time work at Joe's Auto Repair, where he fixes other people's problems for $12 an hour and tries not to think about his own mounting collection of deferred maintenance and postponed dreams. The rain intensifies as he pulls onto the shoulder, gravel crunching beneath his tires like broken promises, while the truck's emergency flashers begin their rhythmic pulse that cuts through the darkness with urgent red light that warns other drivers of trouble ahead, of lives interrupted by circumstances beyond anyone's control. Steam rises from his hood as the engine idles, and through the passenger window he can see Emma stir slightly, her eyelashes fluttering against her cheek, just as Sarah's had during peaceful dreams of places they planned to visit someday, when they had time and money and the luxury of believing that the future stretched endlessly ahead like an unbroken highway leading toward destinations that would always be there when they were ready to reach them. "Stay sleeping, baby girl," he whispers, pulling on the rain jacket that's seen better decades and countless emergencies that have taught him the difference between problems that can wait and crises that demand immediate action, regardless of personal comfort or convenience. The moment he steps outside, the storm claims him, soaking through his jeans and filling his boots with cold water that calls to mind the morning he scattered Sarah's ashes in the river she loved. When the rain felt like tears, the sky was crying for all of them, for love interrupted and plans canceled, and the arbitrary cruelty of accidents that steal futures from people who've done nothing wrong except trust that tomorrow will resemble today in all the ways that matter most. Frank's weathered hands tremble not just from the cold, as he explains how this 1987 Harley-Davidson has been his constant companion through life's most significant moments, its deep rumble serving as soundtrack to his daughter Rebecca's childhood. From the day he rode it home from the hospital when she was born to her high school graduation, when he'd revved the engine outside the auditorium until she emerged, cap and gown billowing, to scold him with a smile that meant she was secretly proud. "I've ridden this bike to every important moment in her life," Frank says, his words barely audible above the storm, water streaming down his face like tears he's too proud to shed. Her first day of school, every birthday, the day she got accepted to college, when she called to tell me about the engagement. She specifically asked me to ride the Harley to her wedding tomorrow. Said it wouldn't be the same without hearing that engine rumble up to the church steps like it always has. Mark's flashlight reveals the extent of the problem as he probes deeper into the engine's mechanical heart, his trained eye recognizing the telltale signs of a blown head gasket, the kind of failure that typically requires days in a proper shop with specialized tools and parts that might not even exist anymore for a bike this vintage. The rain continues its relentless assault, turning the highway shoulder into a muddy battlefield where man and machine face off against time and weather and the cruel mathematics of mechanical failure. Frank paces in tight circles, his boots splashing through puddles that reflect the truck's headlights like scattered stars. And Mark notices in the man's movements the particular desperation of someone who spent a lifetime being reliable, showing up, keeping promises, only to face the possibility of failing when it matters most. "The wedding starts at 10 in the morning, Frank continues, checking his phone for what must be the 100th time, the screen's blue glow, illuminating features etched with worry and self-recrimination. Rebecca's been planning this for 2 years, every detail perfect, except she insisted on leaving one thing unplanned, the moment when her old man rides up on Grandpa's bike and walks her down the aisle. Her fiancé thinks it's silly, all this motorcycle nonsense, but Rebecca said the sound of this engine is the sound of home, of family, of all the times I showed up when she needed me." His voice cracks slightly and Mark pretends not to notice, understanding that some emotions are too raw to acknowledge directly, especially between strangers who've known each other for less than an hour. The storm intensifies around them, as if nature itself is testing their resolve, and Mark feels the weight of decision pressing down like the low-hanging clouds that obscure the horizon. His mechanic's mind calculates the impossibility of the situation, even if he had the right parts, even if he had his fully equipped workshop instead of a roadside shoulder, even if the weather cooperated, this repair would take the better part of a day. But something else stirs in his chest, a memory of Sarah's voice from their last conversation before the accident, when she'd looked up from helping Emma with homework to say, "You know what I love most about you, Mark? You're the kind of person who stops for strangers, who sees someone in trouble and can't just drive by. That's the man I want Emma to remember, the father I want her to become." Inside the truck, Emma shifts in her sleep. And through the rain-streaked window, Mark can see her delicate face, peaceful and trusting, Mr. Patches clutched tight against her chest. The $47 in the envelope above his head represents 3 weeks of careful budgeting, of choosing generic cereal and skipping his own lunches, so Emma could have everything she needed for the upcoming school year. Portland is 6 hours away through mountain passes that become treacherous in weather like this, a journey that would eat most of a tank of gas and probably require an overnight stay they can't afford. Logic and responsibility wage war against something deeper, something that sounds suspiciously like Sarah's voice, whispering that sometimes the universe puts you exactly where you need to be, at exactly the moment when another person needs you most. Frank continues his nervous pacing, pulling out his phone to show Mark pictures of his daughter in her wedding dress during the final fitting, her face radiant with joy and anticipation. "She's my only child," he explains unnecessarily, as happens when someone desperately needs a stranger to comprehend the depth of their love and fear. "Her mother died when Rebecca was 12, cancer, and it was just the two of us for so many years. This bike was our lifeline, our way of staying connected even when she went away to college, when she moved across the country for work, when life tried to pull us apart. Every time I visited, every important moment, I rode the Harley because she said it made her feel like a little girl again, safe and loved and sure that her daddy would always show up." The rain pounds against Mark's jacket with increasing fury, and he makes a decision that surprises even himself. The words emerging before his cautious mind can intervene. "My truck's got a trailer hitch," he hears himself saying, straightening up from his examination of the broken engine. "We'll load your bike in the back, and I'll drive you to Portland tonight. Emma and I don't have anywhere else to be." Frank stares at him through the rain, his mouth opening and closing like a man trying to process an impossible kindness. And Mark can see the war between gratitude and disbelief, playing out across features that have probably learned not to expect miracles from strangers on dark highways. "You can't do that," Frank protests, but his voice carries the desperate hope of someone who wants to be wrong about human nature, who needs to believe that sometimes help arrives exactly when it's needed most. "It's 6 hours through mountain passes. You've got your daughter. You don't even know me. I can't ask you to drive through this storm for a stranger." But Mark is already walking back toward his truck, his mind shifting into the practical mode that served him well during his paramedic days, when quick decisions and decisive action meant the difference between life and death, between making it in time and living with regret forever. Within minutes, they've secured the Harley in the truck bed and begun their midnight journey toward Portland. The drive becomes a passage through more than just miles as the pickup truck cuts through the storm-darkened landscape, Frank's stories filling the cab with memories that transform two strangers into reluctant confidants bound by the strange intimacy that emerges when people share their deepest fears in the safety of moving darkness. Emma sleeps peacefully between them, her head resting against Frank's leather jacket, which he'd insisted on removing so she could use it as a pillow, the gesture revealing arms covered in tattoos that tell stories of military service, lost love, and roads traveled in search of something that might be peace. Through the windshield, the world blurs past in streaks of neon and shadow, truck stops and small towns that exist as islands of light in an ocean of rural darkness, while Frank's voice weaves tales of his late wife Margaret, how they met at a motorcycle rally in Sturgis 4 decades ago, how she rode her own Harley until the cancer treatments made her too weak to handle the weight and vibration. "Margaret used to say that bikes were just metal and chrome until you put love into them," Frank explains as they navigate a particularly treacherous mountain pass, his weathered hands gentle as he adjusts Emma's position so she can sleep more comfortably. "She said every mile you ride with someone becomes part of the machine's soul. That's why this Harley means so much to Rebecca. It's not just my father's bike, or mine. It's 40 years of family history. Every Christmas morning ride, every birthday surprise, every time I showed up at her school or college or apartment because she needed her dad." Mark listens while calculating fuel consumption and drive time, his mechanic's mind working through the logistics of their midnight mission, while another part of him processes the profound loneliness in Frank's voice. the way older men sometimes bear grief like a second skeleton, invisible but structural, holding them upright through sheer force of habit and responsibility. The storm follows them inland, transforming familiar highways into alien waterscapes where visibility shrinks to the reach of headlights and every passing semi-truck sends walls of spray across their windshield like automotive tsunamis. Frank shares his fears about retirement, about becoming irrelevant to grown children who love him but don't need him the way they once did, about watching Rebecca build a life with someone who thinks motorcycles are dangerous relics from a simpler time. Her fiancé's a good man, Frank admits. College-educated, steady job, treats her like a queen. But he doesn't understand why she wants her old man to ride up on a 40-year-old Harley when they could rent a proper limousine, why she insists on keeping traditions that probably seem backward to someone his age. Mark recognizes the particular ache in Frank's voice, an identical ache that grips him when Emma talks excitedly about friends' fathers who coach soccer teams and attend PTA meetings, successful men with reliable schedules who can promise their presence at every important moment. They stop at an all-night diner outside Salem, exactly the type of fluorescent-lit sanctuary that exists specifically for travelers caught between destinations, where coffee tastes like burnt hope and pie provides comfort to people who need sugar and human contact more than fine dining. Emma wakes as they park, her hair tousled and eyes bright with the particular alertness that children possess when adventure interrupts their normal routines. "Are we there yet, Daddy?" she asks, and Frank laughs for the first time since Mark found him stranded, the sound rusty but genuine as he helps her down from the truck cab. Inside the diner, Emma charms their waitress by ordering pancakes with extra syrup for energy, and peppers Frank with questions about motorcycles that reveal her natural curiosity about the adult world she's eager to understand. Frank pulls out his phone to show Emma pictures of Rebecca in her wedding dress, his thick fingers surprisingly gentle as he swipes through images that document his daughter's transformation from little girl to bride. "She looks like a princess," Emma declares with the authority that 8-year-olds bring to matters of beauty and fashion, and Frank's eyes grow bright with moisture that might be tears or might just be exhaustion. "She is a princess," he agrees, "which makes me the luckiest king in the world." Mark excuses himself to check on the motorcycle in the truck bed, but really he needs a moment to process the weight of what they're doing, standing in the parking lot where his breath creates gentle clouds in the cold air, while he examines Frank's Harley under the harsh glare of security lights. The bike is magnificent even in its mechanical distress, chrome and steel shaped into a machine that transcends mere transportation to become sculpture, art, a physical manifestation of freedom and rebellion and the American dream of endless highways leading toward infinite possibilities. Mark's trained eye sees past the blown head gasket to the loving care that's kept this machine running for 4 decades. The way every bolt and wire has been maintained with religious devotion. How Frank has probably spent countless hours in his garage treating this motorcycle not like a vehicle, but like a shrine to everything he values about independence and reliability, and showing up when promises need to be kept. While Emma and Frank share pancakes inside, Mark retrieves his emergency toolkit from behind the truck seat and begins working on the Harley by the light of his phone's flashlight, his fingers finding the familiar rhythm of repair work that has sustained him through 2 years of single parenthood and financial uncertainty. The head gasket replacement should be impossible under these conditions, but Mark has spent enough years coaxing life back into broken machines to know that sometimes impossibility is just another word for a problem that hasn't been solved yet. He works with the focused intensity that his former EMT training taught him, the understanding that when someone's counting on you, when time is running short and stakes are high, you find ways to make the impossible merely difficult. The rain has softened to a steady drizzle, and through the diner's windows he can see Emma demonstrating proper pancake cutting technique to Frank, who watches her with the delighted attention that grandfathers reserve for precocious children, who remind them that the world still contains wonder worth protecting. By the time Frank and Emma emerge from the diner at nearly 4 a.m., Mark has the Harley's engine running, with a deep, satisfied rumble that cuts through the pre-dawn air like a mechanical prayer answered. Frank stops dead in his tracks, his face cycling through disbelief, gratitude, and something approaching awe as he realizes what Mark has accomplished in the parking lot of a roadside diner. "You fixed it," he says unnecessarily, his tone thick with emotion. And Mark just shrugs as he always does when people thank him for doing what needs to be done. Emma claps her hands with delight at the sound of the engine, and Frank lifts her onto the bike's seat so she can pretend to ride, her delicate hands gripping the handlebars, while she makes motorcycle noises that send both men into laughter that feels like release, like the moment when pressure finally finds a way to escape. They reach Portland as the first hints of dawn paint the sky pink. Frank mounts his restored Harley, the engine's familiar rumble echoing off empty downtown streets as he rides towards St. Mary's Cathedral. Rebecca emerges from the church steps still in her wedding dress from the early morning photos, and at the sound of her grandfather's bike, tears of pure joy stream down her face. The promise has been kept. Mark and Emma return home exhausted but fulfilled, and after just a few hours of sleep, Mark wakes not to his usual alarm clock, but to a sound that begins as distant thunder and grows into something that defies immediate explanation. A deep rhythmic rumbling that seems to emerge from the earth itself and build into a mechanical symphony that rattles the windows of their small ranch house. Emma appears in his bedroom doorway, still in her pajamas but wide awake with excitement, pressing her face against the window that overlooks their quiet residential street. "Daddy, come look," she whispers, with the reverent tone she usually reserves for Christmas morning or unexpected snow days. And Mark joins her at the window to witness something that transforms their ordinary Saturday into legend. 600 motorcycles line Maple Street as far as the eye can see, their chrome and steel gleaming in the morning sunlight, like an army of mechanical knights assembled for some impossible crusade. The bikes range from vintage Harleys that could be Frank's contemporaries to sleek modern machines that look like they've escaped from science fiction. But they all share the common purpose of their riders. Leather-clad men and women who've traveled from across the Pacific Northwest after hearing a story that restored their faith in strangers and random kindness. At the head of this magnificent procession sits Frank on his father's 1987 Harley-Davidson, the engine that Mark repaired in a diner parking lot, now purring with perfect mechanical contentment, while its rider holds a leather jacket that bears the words "Honorary Road Family" embroidered across the back in thread that catches the light like golden promises. The sight defies logic and probability. 600 individual decisions to wake early on a weekend morning and ride sometimes hundreds of miles to honor a debt that exists only in the complex mathematics of human decency. But Mark understands instinctively that this gathering represents something larger than gratitude or even community. These riders have created a living monument to the radical idea that helping strangers matters, that small acts of kindness ripple outward through networks of connection to create waves of generosity that can lift everyone they touch. Emma grips his hand with excitement that vibrates through her compact frame, and it dawns on Mark that she's witnessing a lesson about human nature that no classroom could provide, seeing proof that the world contains more good than cynicism would suggest, more connection than isolation would allow. Frank dismounts his bike and approaches their front porch, his weathered face transformed by a smile that makes him look decades younger. While behind him, the assembled riders maintain their engines at idle, creating a sustained rumble that Mark feels in his chest like a second heartbeat. "You helped one of us," Frank calls out, his call carrying easily over the mechanical chorus. "Which means you helped all of us, and that makes you family whether you like it or not." The leather jacket he extends represents more than clothing. It's membership in a tribe that values loyalty and mutual aid above profit and convenience. A community that understands motorcycles as vehicles for purposes beyond simple travel, symbols of freedom and rebellion, and the bonds that form between people who choose to face the world's uncertainties together rather than alone. The riders begin dismounting, and Mark observes that each one brings something: toolboxes and spare parts, gift certificates to motorcycle shops and auto parts stores, business cards from garage owners who want to offer him work, envelopes that probably contain money, and certainly contain stories of their own encounters with unexpected kindness from strangers who stopped to help when help was needed most. A woman with silver hair and arms strong enough to handle a bike twice, her weight introduces herself as Margaret, like Frank's late wife, may she rest in peace, and explains that she owns 3 auto repair shops in Oregon and can always use a mechanic who understands that fixing machines is really about fixing the connections between people and the things they love. Emma emerges onto the porch still in her pajamas, her hair uncombed, but her smile radiant as she surveys the incredible scene that has transformed their quiet street into something from a dream or a movie about the kind of world adults wish existed, but rarely believe they'll ever see. Frank kneels to her level and presents her with a child-sized leather vest decorated with patches that chronicle famous rides and beloved bikes. Making her an honorary member of a family she's joined simply by being present when her father chose kindness over caution on a rain-soaked highway the night before. Every princess needs proper riding gear, Frank explains seriously, and Emma's giggle of delight seems to echo through the assembled crowd of riders who've all stopped their conversations to witness this moment of pure joy. The morning unfolds like a festival celebrating human decency. Riders sharing stories of their own encounters with roadside angels, mechanics who've worked miracles with broken machines, strangers who've offered shelter during storms, or rides to destinations that seemed impossibly distant. Mark discovers himself surrounded by offers of friendship and employment, invitations to rallies and rides, business cards from people who want to hire him or teach him or simply know him better, because word has spread through motorcycle communities from British Columbia to Northern California about the single father who drove through a storm to get a stranger to his daughter's wedding. Emma moves through the crowd like a young ambassador, accepting patches for her vest and listening to stories about the kind of adventures that await people brave enough to believe in the kindness of strangers. As the morning progresses and the sun burns away the last of the previous night's rain clouds, the riders begin preparing for departure, but not before establishing something permanent in the space between Mark's old life and whatever comes next. Frank presents him with a key to a workshop space behind his house, rent-free for as long as Mark needs it, equipped with tools and lifts and everything necessary to transform a hobby into a livelihood. Rebecca's wedding was perfect, Frank explains, but watching you work on that engine in a diner parking lot at 3 a.m, that was when I knew I'd met someone who understands that taking care of machines is really about taking care of the people who depend on them. The sound of 600 motorcycles starting in near unison creates a mechanical symphony that neighborhood children will remember for the rest of their lives. But as the riders begin their procession back to highways that will carry them home to their own families and responsibilities, the rumble that remains in Mark's heart speaks to something more lasting than noise. Emma stands beside him on the porch, her new leather vest over her pajamas, waving goodbye to friends she's known for less than 3 hours, but will remember forever as proof that the world contains more magic than cynicism allows, more connection than isolation suggests possible. The street gradually returns to its normal quiet, but Mark recognizes that something fundamental has shifted in their small corner of the universe, that the single decision to help a stranded stranger has opened doorways to possibilities he never imagined existed. Emma tugs at his hand and asks, "Daddy, can we get a motorcycle too?" And Mark finds himself seriously considering the question, thinking about highways that lead toward adventure, about the community that's adopted them, about Sarah's voice whispering that sometimes the longest journeys begin with the simple decision to pull over in the rain and ask if someone needs help.